GV Director is an integrated live production center, combining graphics, clip store, and switcher functionality into a single affordable solution. With GV Director, we wanted to take a step back and reimagine live production workflows, looking closely at not only how we can improve the way we make television, but making the workflows accessible to less technically skilled, more creative operators. When you think about it, live production can be broken down into a number of elemental building blocks. You have effects and graphics, overlays. You have pre-produced material, such as clips and stills. You almost certainly have live inputs and cameras. And you have, of course, transitions. It seems overly simple, but these four things are the main building blocks of just about all live productions. In GV Director, we call each of these building blocks production elements. So whether you're talking about your effects or your transitions created using our Director Composer tool, or your clips or live inputs, we call them all production elements. They are elements of the production, and it is in the layering of these elements that our operator can create the look and feel of their live production. In many ways, we've borrowed some of the concepts you would find in a non-linear editing environment and brought them into the live production workspace. So how do we use production elements? Well, I can interact with them directly on our integrated touch panel. I select the element for camera 1, and camera 1 is now our background element. I select camera 2, and we get camera 2. I can also interact directly with our multiviewer, selecting camera 1, camera 2, etc. This is a very intuitive way to work with live production background elements. But probably most usefully, I can assign production elements to the physical buttons on our GV Director panel. Now, whilst this may look like a program preset row found on one of our more traditional switcher panels, it's really not. These are simply buttons that you can assign production elements to, and in doing so, create a user experience that is tailor-made for the production requirements at hand. So let's assign some cameras. I'm going to assign camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4, camera 5, camera 6, and camera 7, and finally camera 8. Now, what I've created here, by assigning elements in this way, is a very familiar mode of operation, a cut bus if you like. Something that just about anyone who has sat in front of a production switcher in the last 50 years will be familiar with. I'm now going to assign some other elements I'm going to need for this production. I'm going to go to my transitions collection and choose the transitions that I need the most for this particular production. And lastly, I'm going to choose the effect elements, those elements that I'll be needing perhaps more frequently. And I'll assign those to some of the other buttons here on my GV Director panel. So I'm going to assign the logo effect here. I'm going to assign another logo effect here. I'm going to assign my final results effect here. So as you can see, I've created a user interface here that is tailor-made for the requirements of this particular production. Let's look at operation. Cutting, as we've seen, is pretty simple, but let's suppose I need to perform a mix transition. I simply select mix from the transition elements, and now I'm performing a mix. Operationally, however, it's not at all different from when I was cutting. The simplicity here perhaps becomes more apparent when I choose a transition such as carousel. This is a complicated transition effect, but operationally it's no more complicated than when I was cutting. This is one of the fundamental philosophies behind GV Director. Our operators can focus on telling a story, the creative side of making television, without being encumbered by the technical aspects of how we make television. Let's talk about media. Here I have some clip and still elements that have been part of our pre-production and then ingested into the GV Director system. And as you can see, if I select a clip, it behaves much like any other background element. We're now transitioning to that clip. Notice I'm not thinking about servers or channels of server, I'm focused on the media itself, the production element that I need and when I need it. Here's another clip. This time I've chosen to cut to it to demonstrate the real-time control you have over media elements from the GV Director panel. When it comes to effect elements, we use those in the same way. If I need a logo, I press the logo button. When I press the button again, it animates off. Notice I'm not thinking about keyers or other traditional switcher resources, I'm working in a much more creative space. This final standings effect, I think, shows you the quality of the graphical elements you can get from the integrated graphics engine that is part of GV Director. A complex and fully featured effect with live data sourced from a large array of different data sources. Real-time stats, score and RSS feed driven effects, all possible with GV Director. Next, I'd like to talk about the concept we're calling the stage. The stage is an extremely useful tool for modern live productions. Broadly speaking, the stage can be used in two main ways. One way is to use it as a fairly traditional preview. And so, for example, let's assume I want to preview one of the clips we were using earlier. I open the stage, temporarily putting my integrated touch panel into stage mode, and I select the clip. Once I'm happy that this is indeed the correct clip, I press the take button. And our clip is now on air. That's one way to use the stage, as a previewing tool. Another way to use the stage, and perhaps a more interesting way, is to use it as a compositing tool. So let's assume that I'd like to take that clip I was using earlier, but I also want to combine that element with some effect elements. I'm going to add a couple of logo effects to the stage. So now I've got a background element and two effect elements. But I'm going to navigate to my Transitions tab, and I'm going to select the cube transition, adding it as well to the stage. If I press the rehearse button, I can see exactly how this is going to look. Keep in mind that someone else may have built this staged effect for me. When I'm happy with the way this composited effect looks, I press the take button, and all of those elements are now on air. I've built a complicated effect and brought it to air by simply and intuitively layering production elements. The last thing I'd like to show you is the concept we're calling event list. This feature works great in scripted or semi-automated productions. For example, a talk show where each guest has a lower third graphic, and perhaps a clip from their new movie. The order of the guests is probably known, and our GV Director operator can simply stack up the relevant production elements in the correct order. Pressing the take button will allow the operator to progress through the event list, whilst being free to use cameras and other production elements normally and as the production dictates.